Hi, good morning. My name's Daniel. I'm head of universities at DLD College in London. I'm going to share my screen so we can do a presentation. Okay, so the main purpose of today's discussion is to look at how we prepare students at DLD College in London for university. And we have a very wide range of different students at DLD. So inevitably we have to adjust the way we approach the preparation process. We have to make sure that we tailor our provision for the specific requirements of different students doing BTech, doing IFP, and doing A-levels. So it's quite a complicated differentiation. So the main thing is to look at exactly how we can prepare the students in terms of their aspirations when they arrive and the outcome when they leave. So what we offer, DLD is a very well-established college, and we've had some excellent A-level results in 2020. Each year we see some improvements, and in 2020 we had 75% A star to B, so that's 75% of our A-level results, A star, A and B. And we process roughly 150 university applications each year to UK and non-UK. The number of students doing BTech within that figure is significant and rising, and the number of IFP students is also significant and rising. Something in the region of 45 IFP applications were processed this year for the 2021 apply, and a very large and increasing number of BTech applications as well. And some students combine BTech and A-level in order to get admission to their courses. So in 2020, looking at the statistics, we estimated that 42% of DLD leavers went to Russell Group universities. And again, year after year, the most popular destinations for our students, whether they're domestic or international, are the universities in London. And the most popular destination last year, 2020, was King's College, which had the highest number of entrants from DLD, followed by City University and Queen Mary, University of London, and the University of Westminster. Those four are the top destinations. But our students do go everywhere, but their preference is largely for London, which there are specific reasons for, connected mostly to the fact that the largest number of our students are international students. So the way we prepare our students is based on traditionally on Directors of Studies, but we're evolving that role now, and Directors of Studies will still be playing a role in the process. But we are now training a new group of admissions tutors who are going to be specifically targeting the year 12s and the year 13s, year 14s. And our university admissions tutors will be supported by myself and managed by myself. And their job is going to be to take a cohort of students and take them right through the process from beginning to end, from initial course choices to preparing their applications, researching how to do extension activities, and how to manage sometimes the differences between their aspirations and their abilities. So the university admissions tutors are going to be responsible for the process from beginning to end. And it'll be particularly significant for year 12, as I'll explain in a moment. Our year 14, which is IFP students, International Foundation students, who come to London in September of the year, so they're only here for 9 to 10 months. The process is somewhat different for them. I'll explain that in a moment. So what we offer is a complete package from the beginning to the end. And for year 12, this process starts very much, as you can see here, for the A-level BTech students, the preparation starts in the spring term of year 12. Now, of course, this year that was slightly disrupted because the college was closed. So some of the things we wanted to do in the spring term, we've had to delay until the summer term. The idea is to get the students aware of the landscape of higher education as soon as possible in year 12, and particularly those students who are highly aspirational, to make them realize some of the things that they do need to do in order to access elite universities or highly competitive universities. And so the university admissions tutors will be, from the spring term onwards, with year 12, will be focused very much on this from next year. For the moment, we're beginning that program now in April, and we hope to have pretty much all of our year 12 students registered online on the UCAS, preparing their applications, their initial stages, by the end of May, and certainly all of them by the end of June, before the summer starts. Also, this year we're trialing a new UCAS week in June to guide students through the whole process. So to make sure that all of them are fully sorted out before the summer holidays, so that when they come back in August, September, the most important part of the application for them will have been done. The main task they will have at that point, from that point onwards, again guided by their admissions tutors, will be to finalize their personal statements. So our hope is to try to get as much of the process done in the summer term as possible, which seems to be the way that colleges and schools are going. So one of the key tasks we have is researching courses. And because a lot of our students come to Britain and they don't know, as I said, the landscape of higher education, they don't really understand what it is. One of my tasks last term was to provide information for all of them, for all year 12s, explaining exactly what type of universities there are in the UK, and because there are so many and so many different types. And we have students who are interested in highly academic degrees, and we have students who are interested in much more vocational degrees, much more hands-on training for a vocational position. So we have to make it clear that the range of different universities has to be studied properly, and to make sure that their applications are targeted. As I say, we're trying to use the summer term to the greatest extent possible. And one of the key things here is to make the students realize that they have a responsibility to think about what would make the difference between their idea of what they're going to do in higher education and how they can actually make it happen. So we're thinking about how to demonstrate outstanding academic ability, or how to demonstrate initiative, how to demonstrate an overall commitment to a subject and an understanding of a subject which brings to the university some knowledge, some prior knowledge. So one of the key things then, if we summarize it in 4 key points: matching qualifications and course entry requirements. The students don't often know or understand what it is that you actually have to have in order to get into a particular course. And to ensure that people aren't disappointed later, we have to make sure that, particularly with the foreign students, that their existing qualifications and what they're studying now, what they have, or the equivalents from their own country, if they're international, do match the course entry requirements for the individual college or university. And it's really essential to clear this up straight away. And special attention has to be paid to IELTS, because so much of the time students may have an IGCSE in English, or they may have an IGCSE in another subject. And quite often the IGCSE is not accepted. Under certain conditions, IGCSE English is accepted, but generally good universities in UK want to see either a GCSE in English taken at an approved English language institution, or they want to see a high grade in IELTS, usually 6.7 or above, 6.5 or 7 rather, in some cases 7.5. This is vital, and the same applies also to mathematics. We have to make sure so often colleges have a specific requirement for GCSE maths at level 5 or 6 or above. And if a student doesn't have that, then we have to get them to retake it or to take it for the first time. And we have to make sure that if they're not going to take that and they don't have that qualification, then they choose a course at a university which doesn't require it. Because this does create all sorts of disappointment later if people aren't made aware of the precise facts. So a lot of work goes into this, and I guess it's my job to make sure it happens. And it's the university admissions tutors will be making sure the students understand that point as well. So as I said, we have 4 main pathways to higher education at DLD. And since I've been in charge of the job, I've been looking at how to model the pathways and how to broadly understand what type of students are coming in and what type of students are leaving. So it's a question of what value are we adding on this pathway for our cohort from the moment they arrive in September to the moment they leave in June, 18 months later. And so the dominant group are A-level still, because we are to a large extent still predominantly a 6th form with a year 11 and a small year 10. So we have the majority of our students doing A-level, or at least a combination of BTech and A-level. And a growing number, as I said at the beginning, are doing BTech, and BTech is offered in a range of different subjects, and including film, media, business, etc. And of course, we have a large international foundation program, which is expanding as well this year with the addition of a new one in social science, and is going to be delivered by politics, international relations, sociology, and geography teachers combined. So the International Foundation is expanding as well. And also this year we've managed to gain acceptance for our International Foundation program offering at some new colleges and new universities. So if I start with A-level, A-level is the most obvious choice. And at the very top end, we have the ultra competitive applications. And we have to really spend a lot of time supporting students who are applying to places like Imperial College. Clearly the same applies to Oxbridge, and I'll talk about Oxbridge in a moment. But for example, a student who wanted to go to do engineering at Imperial would realistically have to have 3 A stars. And they might also want to increase their offering by having an extended project qualification in EPQ. And clearly this is for a minority of students, because not many are going to be able to get into Imperial. I think this year we have 1 offer holder from Imperial for engineering. And so this is the upper end. And some of our best teaching staff will be involved in trying to ensure that students who are given this type of extremely difficult offer are able to meet it. And we have some excellent teaching staff here who are teaching maths, further maths, and physics. So the offering is very good and is supported very well. Again, it's my job to try to focus as well also on the very best students, to try to cultivate their abilities. Fortunately, some of the very best students already are aware of what it is they need to do, so that sometimes makes it easier. Slightly less competitive, but still very competitive, is top Russell Group universities like London School of Economics. Very popular degree at LSE, obviously, is economics itself, or law. Law is actually more popular. And again, students realistically have to have A star, A star, A. For example, in maths, economics, politics would be an ideal combination. Plus excellent GCSEs. And again, this is for a minority of students, but we do our best to support the aspiration. This year, quite a lot of students have applied to LSE. LSE still haven't made any offers yet, so we're waiting. Second category, A-levels and or BTech. Many students decide to do one or two A-levels plus BTech. So they do the single version of BTech, and they try to combine this so that their overall profile, their academic profile, is enhanced by the ability to do the BTech course, which is done largely through coursework. Again, this is very popular with both domestic and international students, and the BTech offering is growing. So one of the most common is the business management course, for example, at City University, as I said at the beginning, is one of the key destinations for DLD students. Many of them want to go to what was previously, it's being renamed soon, the UCAS Business School, for which you would need 3 A-levels, or you would need the BTech Level 3 extended diploma with distinctions. As I say, this is a very, very common choice for our students. And also, business management is a common course choice as well for IFP students too. And BTech as well, many of our students do the full BTech. So one of the most popular course choices is media, digital media and design. So I found a good example here is from the University of Greenwich. Greenwich is increasingly popular, Greenwich and Goldsmiths University in Southeast London, very close to where we are in Lambeth. And the option for doing this type of degree, you can do A-levels. BBC would get you a place to do this type of degree. Very hands-on training, media design for a career in media. Or you would need, again, distinction with the BTech. So we're very flexible, and we can offer the students the combination of either doing A-level and BTech, or BTech itself. And again, the students' aspirations have to be targeted carefully towards a particular type of university. So BBC is standard for a college for somewhere like Greenwich. Finally, the fourth most common pathway through DLD is IFP, and the IFP covers a wide range of different subjects, including, as I said, the new social science offering, plus business, fashion, media, and so on. It is very popular for subjects such as the one that's displayed here, BA Advertising Brand Design, which I chose at random really, but from Ravensbourne University, which is a common destination for our students. Ravensbourne is very popular and is a very good institution, which we have links with. So for this, we would really be focusing, and I've used the example here of somebody doing, for example, fashion management, IFP fashion management. This is something which requires also an excellent portfolio. And our students are given the very best support here by the art department, and they have some really expert knowledge. In addition, our head of art is also very, very good at managing the art applications, and this is going to be a big focus for this year as well, because he's almost certain to be one of our new university admissions tutors as well. Going back to this term then, for year 12, this is a checklist of the things that we will have done with our year 12 students, hopefully by the end of this term. They will have registered on UCAS, they will be fully acquainted with the system. This year UCAS is changing the way that students will relate to their application. Everything is being done now through the hub, which is a different way of engaging with UCAS, because I think they realized that having 2 modes of communication through the system wasn't very useful. So everything is done through UCAS hub, and students register using their own private email addresses. And they can then start applying from May the 18th. So the process doesn't start formally until May the 18th. They will have also shortlisted and researched their university choices. Of course, they're free to change those choices right up until the time when they decide to apply in October. And this is really the practical stuff that we help them with, making sure that they get it right, making sure that they don't make mistakes about what their actual qualifications are, and making sure that they have the correct English language qualification, and if not, they have to be entered again for IELTS. All of our students are entered for IELTS, and if they don't get the required grade the first time, then we enter them for a second time in the summer afterwards. I've put on the list here number 5, researching summer school and pre-university courses. I'll come back to that in a second. So here you can see a breakdown from last year's data. It's too early to do this year's data, but for last year's data, if you look at the pie chart, you'll notice that the largest proportion of our applicants applied for business, finance, and management. These are the most popular degree course choices for DLD students, followed by the humanities. So that's nearly 1/3 of our students are applying for a business-related degree. Hence, there are 3 main routes. There is IFP, and again, there's BTech, and again, there's A-level. So it really does depend on the student's ability, and it does depend on the student's level of mathematical skill, what level of business management kind of degree they're going to do. At the top end, there are people doing finance, which usually involves further maths. At the lower end, there's more entrepreneur-related business activity, business training, which tends to be more suited to the BTech students and is examined. The mode of assessment is not primarily examination at the universities. Again, the grey chunk, 17% arts and creative media, a very large proportion. That includes a wide range of subjects, mostly art, but also architecture, film is one of the most popular there. And science comes in, science, maths, and medicine at around 10%, 9%. So this is the breakdown. I would say that breakdown is not typical of a London or a UK private school. I think it reflects, to a certain extent, the preference for a very large number of our international students who want to train in management and business. So, but again, this will change this year. It won't be the same. I anticipate this year that the social science and humanities figure could grow slightly if the IFP in social science is popular, which means that there'll be 2 ways to get into a social science degree, either through A-level or through IFP, and that is for international students. Also popular, if you look at the list of course choices, increasingly popular, which is my subject, coming in at number 8, is international relations. So I don't anticipate these will change drastically this year. We will measure it again next year. So how else do we help with our students? Well, what we're planning for, primarily for next year, because this year it's a little bit more tricky, inviting people to the college, but when all restrictions are lifted, hopefully from next year, certainly hopefully from September, we'll be looking to develop our mentoring. Now, mentoring, of course, is a combination of inspiring and coaching. And our plan is to try to develop the alumni network. So we're working on ways to increase the involvement of previous DLD students who are successful, who are either at university or who've been through university and are successful in life, and coming in to talk to students who are interested in a particular kind of degree. We're going to try this out a little bit, I think, this term, but I think primarily this is going to be for next year. And the goal is really to try to, as I say at the bottom, is to provide insights into the realities of university life and beyond. And again, this is also practical because a lot of the time students don't really know quite what it is they're going to do after university anyway. So it can be interesting to meet people who've been through the system already. So this is something more for next year, and we're looking at increasing that offering. A quick note on applying to non-UK. A small number apply to non-UK. Now, I say small, probably this year something in the region of 12 students, I think, are applying to non-UK universities. That is 12 who've gone through me and sought my advice. The majority of those are to America and Canada. But also this year we've got students applying to Switzerland and to English language courses in the Netherlands. There are some others as well, some in France and some in Spain, and a couple in Australia. But as I say, this is usually a minority. So out of the 145 applications that we processed last year, for 2021 rather, the number is, I would say, less than 10%. So probably about 7% of students consider it. But also a lot of students do apply in their own countries. Now, they don't usually need my help for that because they understand the process themselves. But we can always support it by providing references. And a lot of my job is making sure that students have adequate access to transcripts, academic records, reports, references, and that this process is as seamless as possible. In some countries, of course, it is easier to apply to university once you've already got your qualifications. So, for example, in the Netherlands, it's much easier to apply for a course straight away once you've done your A-levels in Britain. But you can apply with predicted grades as well. And part of my job, again, is to explain to to students why and how to go about it, what they need to do to negotiate the complexities. Now, in relation to Oxbridge, the three degrees which I suppose the three areas that are most difficult, Oxbridge Medicine and Law. Roughly 20 students from DLD will be applying to do these through these routes. We have one of our university admissions tutors is the head of science currently, and he is responsible for managing the medical applications. I focus on the Oxbridge and the law applications. This year, I think we've got about 5 law offer holders from colleges in London, including UCL. And I think that certainly is a subject which is increasing in importance. And so I'm looking at ways to increase students' awareness of how to pass the LNAT test, which is quite tough. So I think this year we'll probably have about 5 or 6 students who will go on to do a law degree. Again, my job is to provide guidance, and so we managed to get 5 Cambridge interviews this year. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get the students to that stage. It requires an awful lot of research and effort and refining. Students themselves also have to prepare. It's very tough. The interview process is very tough. And this is one of the things we're looking at right now, is how to get the Year 12 students to realize what you need to do ahead, 2 terms ahead of applying, to start making yourself a viable candidate for Oxbridge. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that, but there are an enormous range of different things one can do. But probably the most important thing is to make sure that you know a lot more about your subject than you were taught in the classroom. I would say that's the single most important thing, is that you are interested in and know a lot more about the subject you intend to study. Because that's the difference, I suppose, with elite universities, is that they know that the vast majority of the students who go there, are going to be already pretty good at the subject, as opposed to needing guidance from the ground up, which is why they recruit in that way. So we give them additional help with, as I say, preparing for BMAT, preparing for LMAT, the TSA thinking skills assessment tests. And then obviously there are quite a few colleges and universities that use these. Not as many as, it's not like SATs in America, although SATs has been suspended in America this year. The SATs requirement is across the board. Here in UK, the number of colleges and universities that require specific entrance tests is much lower, much lower. Obviously, DLD is not just about education in the classroom. We also have to encourage our students in other ways. And so one of the things that's been developed over the last 5 years is expanding the extension and enrichment activities. Let me differentiate between these two things. Often they're confused. So when we talk about extension activities, we are talking about extending knowledge that was gained already in lessons. So for students who really are good at the subject or are interested in the subject, extending their knowledge means working on a theme or a topic that they particularly enjoyed, or something which is really interesting to them, and taking it a little bit further. Enrichment means in-depth learning, and these are slightly different. Extension can be associated subjects. It can be things which are related, not necessarily one specific conceptual theme in a topic. Enrichment is going into the subject in much greater depth. So for example, an enrichment activity is doing project work, whereby a student goes off and researches something which is analytical and involves a high level of evaluation, and draws on all of the skills that they've gained as a student. And to support this, we also have academic societies, which were introduced some time ago. The idea behind these is that Year 12 students can get an opportunity to develop their knowledge by attending regularly and discussing topics, making presentations, going on visits when possible again, and generally becoming more familiar with the world of the subject that they're interested in. And these are all designed to get students to realize that if you're going to be applying for the top level universities, you really, really have to up your game. You need to be somebody who doesn't have to look at a textbook to know the answer to something, because you've already developed a higher level of awareness of the subject. You're interested and conversant. One example of that is our medical society, which is very successful and very popular. Not all of them are going to become medics, but some of them will do biomedical science, and some will eventually become doctors. We also have our co-curricular program, and we also have essay competitions, and we run the EPQ, usually for the better students. Many of them start it, but they can't all finish it. We want to expand access to EPQ, but as ever, it isn't as easy as it might look on paper. What we try to do is make sure that we provide a subject advisor for any student who wants to do EPQ. I myself do it for humanities and social science students. And in fact, I run it. So we tend to try to identify which students are going to be able to finish it. And we had an excellent result this year with one of our students who required EPQ for an imperial offer, and she managed to get an A-star. Very, very good result. We also encourage students, in some cases, to do additional A-level in their own language if necessary, and that can increase their UCAS points if they're looking at trying to expand their UCAS points. So there's a range of other things that are not primarily just academic, but are extension activities. For British universities, however, unlike American universities, the emphasis is primarily on academic performance. So it is all about evidencing outstanding achievement, and that is the most important thing. So finally, a quick comment on pre-university courses. One of the things that I'm interested in is trying to get the students to realize that if they were to enroll on a university summer school, they will automatically increase their appeal as prospective candidates. And although a lot of the summer school courses this year will be online, probably by next year they'll all be face-to-face again. Certainly all universities in Britain will be back to face-to-face teaching anyway in September. So maybe some of them will be face-to-face this summer. But pre-university courses are becoming increasingly popular, and the universities themselves provide a wide range of access courses, also in English as well, in English language skills, because they're really keen to compete. This is a very competitive market for students. And probably the university sector in Britain is a little bit defined by oversupply. There are possibly too many providers, and they're competing for fewer students. But the sector grew so fast in the last 15 to 20 years that that's probably inevitable. It may be that in the future, the sector is going to contract slightly. I think it's almost inevitable. So pre-university courses are an excellent way for students not only to gain an extra qualification, but also to meet people, to network, and add something they can put into their UCAS personal statements that really does show that they made an effort to understand something. And finally, I think it also adds something important about an experience that they've actually gone and experienced what it is like to go to university lectures. So they get an idea of what's ahead. And this is all good stuff, because it gives them a head start, really. That's the best way to put it. It simply gives them a head start. So hopefully by this time next year, one can only hope, there will be full access to these face-to-face kind of like summer school courses again. This summer, I'm not so sure. I think most of them will be online. So I think that's all of the main points I wanted to go through today. And I think I've just gone over my deadline. So I was trying to keep this within 40 minutes. So I'm going to hand over back to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was really interesting, and I hope it's given people a great insight into all the hard work that goes on behind the scenes with Daniel and the teachers here to support the students, identifying. It starts actually at the application process. I know at interview stage, we explore what a student's academic aspirations are and where they might potentially be thinking of going to study, and potentially which courses, so that we can start guiding them even from the offer stage. And then if they do then come to join us, we have our pre-joining questionnaire, again exploring any further thoughts that they have with this, so that the academic societies can be built around the wants and the needs of our students. So I think it's really interesting to hear about all the extra support program that's in place for the students. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask them on the chat or the Q&A function. There was a question that we had before, which was, Daniel, what is your #1 suggestion for a good UCAS application?
My #1 suggestion is, the most important thing is preparation and research, is knowing exactly which are the best courses to apply for in relation to what the student is trying to do. So if with our help, the student has decided that, for example, they want to study, say, law, they're going to have to think about, well, do their A-levels match that? Mostly, there are many A-levels you could do in order to do law. You don't have to do politics and history, but it might help if you do and get an A. Are you familiar with the kind of systems, the kind of training that is involved in this? Is it a career aspiration, or is it primarily an academic aspiration? I think my main advice then, the single most important thing is do your research, and our job is really to help students do that. A secondary thing, which I think is more specific, apart from doing a research and realizing what's really involved and what's entailed and what's out there, is thinking, how do I show the evidence in my personal statement that I really am worth the university considering offering a place? What is it about me? What have I done that proves that I'm worth an offer? And you really have to think about this, because, for example, if there are 50 people applying for 5 places to do a particular degree, they're looking for differentiation. They want to see something special, and it could be a range of different things. And it isn't just the references. I mean, we write references for students in the best possible light, but it's not always possible to say grandiose or brilliant things when a student has not provided anything that really shines. And so students have to think, how can I rise in my appeal? What can I show? And the personal statement is the opportunity to do that, and we reflect that in our references. So often we can't even write our references properly until we've seen what the students are capable of producing in their personal statements, which is why we try to get them to do this as early as possible. So evidencing outstanding achievement is the most important thing, apart from researching what it is, where you're going to go, and matching your choices to your abilities and your expectations. Evidencing outstanding achievement really is important. That is my advice.
Brilliant. So, as well as the evidence, is there any other way to make the UCAS statement look better? So, do you advise people to participate in the co-curricular activities or the EPQ that's on offer?
Well, let me focus on the personal statement. I mean, one of the things we did last year, which was really useful, is we held specifically also for the international students, we held personal statement writing kind of clinics run by the head of English, Simon. And Simon's very good at explaining what reads well and what doesn't read well. And so what we were trying to do was show them that there's a certain way to present yourself in writing, and you need to organize your thoughts. You need to organize what's the priority. So he invited students who were applying to the most competitive universities to come along to clinics after college hours, so after 5 o'clock. And the ones who were most interested came along and took advantage of his advice. And I think in relation to writing personal statements, there are many models. The model that I kind of passed on to the students most frequently last year in September to November was the one which is offered by LSE. And LSE on their website have got a very specific set of requirements. They say, if you're seriously thinking of trying to apply to this university, then think about, does your personal statement do this, 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 and this? And there are some really excellent personal statement advice websites in addition. And so part of my job is to make sure that the students are aware of this. But we also, it is our job to edit what the students say, to make sure that they don't say the wrong thing, and also to make it as presentable as possible. So taking advantage of what we offer, one of the most important things is getting the benefit of the academic staff here at DLD, who are very good, and we're very good at making sure that the outcome, the product, is literate and is presentable. Clearly, we have to differentiate, because we don't want to spend too much time going over editing and re-editing. But the students themselves have to think about what they can bring in that is original as well. It's very helpful if students can say something original, and if possible, as closely connected to the academic subject as possible.
So questions just come in from Petya, who, thank you Petya, she's thanking you for your talk. It was very interesting. And her question's regarding the personal statement on this theme. And she's asking, can it be personal to you, but without relating to any of your achievements, but rather like a story, encapsulating your interest and ambition in the subject and the university?
No, I wouldn't advise that. I would advise that it is personal to the student in the sense that it explains why she wants to study that subject at these universities. So it has to be more specific in that sense. So when we say personal, we don't mean personal as in biography. The biography of the student is made clear largely through the educational history, family background, and all of the details that go into the UCAS form. We strongly advise students not to tell a story such as, from an early age, I have always wanted to be a social anthropologist, because it's never true and it's very difficult to evidence. So it's better when we use the expression personal statement. We mean, what is it? What is the specific reason why you want to study this subject at these universities? And that is what I mean about researching. It may be the case that a particular university offers a variety of a course that you're very interested in, or it may even be the case that if you really have done your research, that you're aware that there are certain academic teachers at that university who you'd really like to study with, and moving from that perspective. So personal doesn't necessarily mean biographical. It means much more identifying why you yourself really want to study at that university. If I can just give one example, sometimes personal statements that are very depersonalized are very unattractive. And I recall last year, in one particular student had written a personal statement. It was very good, but it was very impersonal, and it didn't say anything about why he wanted to study this course. And so the college, one of the universities in question that he'd applied to, wrote back to us, to him as well, saying, could you give us an additional personal statement explaining why you really want to study this subject at our university? Because he hadn't really said anything about that. So I hope that makes sense. So it's finding a balance between the motivation, the personal motivation of the student, and the student evidencing in a much more sort of dispassionate way their academic ability. Primarily what they're interested in is, are you good at the subject and will you do well at the subject?
Brilliant, thank you. Then a final question, unless anybody has got any more questions that they want to submit. A final question was, where have some of the teachers at DLD studied and at which universities?
Well, a wide range. Let me go through a few examples I can think of. I mean, quite a lot of our staff have been to Oxford and Cambridge. I've been to Oxford myself. I went to UCL and Oxford. And I think quite a lot of our staff are also academic in the sense they have done doctorates, PhDs, or master's degrees. There's an awful lot of staff who've done master's degrees. Many have been to King's. I believe Irfan, principal, went to King's. There is a range, a very wide range. I think the majority of them have been to Russell Group universities. I think John Branney studied a master's at, I think, Warwick, if I'm not incorrect. So we do have some very well-educated staff, and some of them are published. I am myself published. I think there's a range of staff who are very much involved in projects outside of their teaching too. So they have outside interests, which is always very interesting. But I think overall our academic staff are pretty good at their subjects and have studied in many cases to master's degree level, and in some cases to PhD level. I'm not aware of where everyone has studied, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Great, thank you so much.